Did law just happen, or was it because you had a background and you had to pick it?
No, I didn't have to pick it. So my educational career was very unusual. I first went to IIT. Initially, I started collecting these lithographed antiquarian books, and thereafter I moved to paintings. But my interest in art, or I only like what is called classical art or realistic art. And I have mainly looked at, and therefore I like mostly art which was done prior to, say, 1960. Initially, so I spent about 7 years studying philosophy and thinking about philosophical problems. I was doing a PhD in philosophy of science at Princeton. I had a lot of privilege to be able to do what I have done. I came from a well-to-do family. I didn't have to worry about my living because I lived with my father. I shared my office with my father. Everything was paid for by my father. Firstly, I think that this business of becoming a senior advocate, to my mind, this whole distinction is not a very meaningful distinction between seniors and advocates on record. The manner of designation of senior advocates is totally arbitrary and rather nepotistic. So you have to apply to become a senior and you have to subject yourself to this arbitrary decision by judges of that court in order to be designated. That my being an advocate on record is a good thing, is useful, rather than being senior, because all the PILs that I file have my name as the advocate on record. With the collapse of the mainstream media in India, collapse meaning today we are seeing that most of it has become what is called Godi Media, which means that media which is just doing propaganda for the government. They are controlled by the government in some way or the other. But social media is largely free. Neither lawyers nor judges will be needed in the profession because artificial intelligence will be able to settle most disputes in a quick and fair manner, far more fair manner than human judges can. So therefore, and it won't need lawyers either. So the AI will just look at all the papers, look at all the evidence, and decide the case. And it will decide it much more fairly than human judges can, because human judges have lots of problems. Some of them are incompetent, some of them are corrupt, some of them have nepotistic, they are not unbiased, etc. All kinds of problems. My message to all lawyers. Unfortunately, today, some of these law firms are making their juniors work so hard that they burn out after a few years.
Hello everyone, welcome to Live Law. I'm your host Nazarat Fatima, and this is the 5th episode of our series where we talk to people from the legal fraternity who are also interested in other things. And today, interestingly and surprisingly, we have with us Mr. Prashant Bhushan, one of the senior most lawyers of this country, who has helped shape this country socially and politically. What is interesting is that I did not know till yesterday, and I think you did not know till now, that Sir is also interested in art and various art forms, and particularly painting. Before I talk more and more about it, I'd simply like to go to Sir and ask him, what was the first time you actually discovered that there was an artist in you?
No, there is no artist in me. I just like art. I enjoy looking at good art, good paintings. And so maybe my mother is responsible for that, because my mother was an artist herself and she had learnt art from one of the foremost artists in the country, who I regard as one of the 3 all-time great wash painters in the Bengal school. One person called Mr. Sukhveer Sanghal, who retired as the principal of the Lucknow School of Art many years ago, and he's passed away now. So I probably picked up my interest in art from her. And initially I started collecting these lithographed antiquarian books, and thereafter I moved to paintings. But my interest in art, or I only like what is called classical art or realistic art. And I have mainly looked at, and therefore I like mostly art which was done prior to, say, 1960. Because after 1960, the world of art moved gradually into abstract, expressionistic art, etc., which is what I don't particularly care for. I only like the old classical art, that is Bengal school art, or the Raja Ravi Verma style of realistic paintings, or 19th century. So I have collected a lot of 19th century European art, because in Europe, even till the 19th century, a lot of good realistic art was being done, and which could be purchased at very nominal prices, because there was a lot of good realistic art done in Europe in the 19th century. And I've also collected a lot of miniature, particularly Mughal miniature paintings, which was a tradition started by Jahangir during his reign and has continued thereafter.
So you talked about this was your intellectual journey. So when it comes to art, because as I can see, this is not the studio that has most of your artworks, the ones that you've purchased. There's more to see. But even looking at this, there's quite a few things that a person can take a look at. So what exactly, which is the art form that actually drove you towards it? What was that, was it a painting? Was it an artistic expression? Was it an artist? What was the first time when you felt like you were actually keen on knowing more about art? Because you say that you mostly like intricate details and you like the detailing in art and you're not into abstract art forms.
So it was an evolution of my interest in art. In a way, in some ways, it started with lithographs, which were a way of illustrating books in the pre-19th or pre-19th century, when there was no photography, and that at that time illustration was done by engraving on either stone or copper plate or steel plate, etc., and then printing from that. So a lot of these lithographs were almost as good as paintings, and some of them used to get hand colored thereafter.
Okay.
And of course, they were based on paintings by very good major artists of that time. So initially it was that. Thereafter, I got quite interested in wash paintings of the Bengal school, paintings done by people like Nandlal Bose or Chuktai, or like my mother's art teacher, Mr. Sangal, or my mother's paintings. And thereafter, I got exposed to a lot of miniature paintings done mainly by the Mughal school, which are very fine, detailed paintings made very painstakingly. Sometimes the paintings are done by single hairbrushes. So that only that can do such fine work. So I can say that my interest kind of kept evolving, but it has stayed within the broad framework of what I call realistic art.
Okay.
Yeah.
So did you ever make an attempt to create something, to paint?
No, unfortunately, I am not endowed, or I never tried to learn painting myself. I just enjoyed looking at good paintings.
So not even an attempt?
No, I never. I remember one of the persons that I used to be close to was Mr. H.D. Shori, who started Common Cause, Mr. Arun Shori's father. he was an artist. So often when I went to his house to see him, I would see him painting. He used to do these somewhat impressionistic landscape paintings of mostly of flowers. Uh, but he was a good artist, and he kept doing his art right almost till the end, till he reached almost 90. I could see him painting even at that age.
Sir, when it comes to, because you were talking about creation of colleges and creation of opportunities, so when we speak of art, particularly in the country, we do not see as many art colleges and we do not see creation of opportunities and creation of jobs compared to what we see in the rest of the fields. For example, in the legal field, we do have a lot of colleges, medical colleges. We have almost a good number of colleges compared to colleges where art is taught. So that is something where it is very indicative of the fact that artists and art is not taken that seriously in the country, because you are from an entirely different background, you come from a legal background, and you also purchase art. So in order to be able to purchase art, we need to see that artists actually have that space where they can grow, where they can learn, and where they can actually practice what they're taught. So what would you say in terms of creation of opportunities for artists, particularly in the country?
I agree that there aren't many good art schools left in this country. So I was very happy yesterday when I saw that Mr. Sukhveer Sanghal's daughter was teaching two young girls art, and good art. So one of the reasons why the art schools have kind of fallen off is because the transformation of art itself. See, art, from being a pleasant visual experience and showing some pleasant reality, has transformed into what is called expressionistic art, where where you draw something quickly or you make something quickly, and it is supposed to have some meaning, and different people attribute different meaning to those paintings, etc. I mean, you can divine any meaning to any painting that is being done today in the form of abstract expressionism. And this kind of art doesn't need to be taught. Of course, I see that there are a number of good artists still doing good realistic art, but that number has dwindled enormously. And today, most of the art that is being done, and even most of the art that is being purchased, is this abstract expressionistic art, which to my mind, I mean, you are trying to search for meaning in that art, and it's not visually very appealing either, to my mind, but that's my view. But that's the kind of art form that has become popular today.
So, but we can always filter it out. Like we have we can have an eligibility criteria. If we're actually setting up a college, we can actually look for people who are interested in realistic art and maybe have some stream that deals with the abstract art. But at the end of the day, we're talking about the creation of opportunities and creation of art schools. So is there something you think should be done or must be done in order to take the art forms and art and artists seriously?
So ultimately, you see, unfortunately, all this is driven by the consumer interest, so to say. And unfortunately, consumer interest has shifted towards what is called abstract expressionism. And therefore, if the consumer interest is only in that kind of art and no longer in realistic art.
So there might be people, I mean, you are interested in it. There must be people like you. I'm interested in it.
But that has to be driven by consumer interest rather than by... So if you create art schools which teach you realistic art, but if people are not appreciating that kind of art, people are not appreciating not because that kind of art is not there. It's all there in the museums. You can look at that realistic art in the museums, but unfortunately, the interest of the people has shifted towards this kind of abstract expressionism that has become fashionable, so to say, at least among the elites. That's the fashionable thing. And it is usually the elite which drives trends. And in the commercial world also, those kind of paintings which command prices and not the old realistic paintings.
So what would your message be to artists and people who purchase art? Because, we say that in order to be a good writer, you have to be a good reader. So even though you do not paint, but you have a lot of expertise in viewing paintings and perceiving art in general. So what would your generic message be to people?
No, my generic message would be don't be taken up by the current prices of this art that we are seeing today. Look at the intrinsic visual appeal of the painting rather than looking at the name of the artist and the commercial prices that I mean, I would say that that's not the way in which even somebody who's investing in art should be purchasing art. Art should be purchased for its intrinsic visual appeal rather than its commercial value at some point of time, because all these commercial values keep fluctuating. But the quality of good art, like the kind of art that Ravi Verma used to do, or the kind of art that Hemendra Majumdar or Chuktai used to do, that kind of art can only be done by painstaking art. It takes time. It takes a very fine artistic hand to do that. But the kind of art that is being done today, which passes off as abstract, expressionistic art, that can be done. Some people can do it in 5 minutes, 10 minutes, etc., and pass it off as something very profound.
Leave it to your interpretation.
Something very profound. They have made something very profound. This is like an acquired taste, which unfortunately is being acquired only by looking at names and their styles of those names.
So because we're oscillating between law and art right now, have there been moments when you're sitting with senior advocates or senior most counsels where you do not talk about law? Because whenever I see people from the fraternity sitting together, they'll always be talking about judges. There'll be like very formal gossip happening, but it's mostly about law. It's about courts, judges, their families, their backgrounds and everything. Do you ever find those chances where you actually, leak in art into it?
There are some lawyers who are also interested in art. With those few lawyers, one can talk about art. There are also a few lawyers who might be interested in films or in music.
I also heard you're interested in science fiction. So that was going to be the first topic, but then we changed it to art. But please tell us about that.
Yeah, so I used to be very interested in science fiction. And I, in fact, once wrote a science fiction novel, which I never published. That was in 1984. I didn't publish it because it was written in a bit of a hurry, and in that form it wasn't good enough to be published. Though I feel that it could have been edited and improved to be a fairly good novel. But anyway. But yes, I was interested. I have not read much science fiction for many years. I hardly read any science fiction for many years. But there was a time in my life when I used to be greatly interested in science fiction. But again, the science fiction that I was interested in was called hard science fiction.
Okay.
That means science fiction which was based on hard science and not what has now become, again, the interest of people has shifted towards what is called science fantasy.
Yeah.
Hard science fiction was, people who used to write hard science fiction were people like Arthur C. Clarke or Isaac Asimov, or later some people like James Patrick Hogan, Jerry Pournelle, where the science was solid, but it was futuristic, so that in future this might happen. So for example, if you are going to have colonies in outer space, what would those colonies be like, and so on. So, and what could happen? So a story which was weaved around that, uh, for example, James Hogan's The Two Faces of Tomorrow was one of those, about life in space colonies. So I used to like that kind of fiction, but again, the interest of most people has shifted towards what is called science fantasy.
So it seems like you are fond of intricacies and detailing in your work, just like you've done in the legal profession, gone quite deep into it.
I've not, no, I don't regard myself as a lawyer's lawyer, which my father was. My father was a lawyer's lawyer, which meant that he went very deep into every legal issue. He read his briefs very carefully, fully, and so on. I don't get into things that deeply, but I just try and get a good, broad, first principles understanding of the issues, and I work on that basis.
So, do you think there should be like a movement that goes against it? Because you're working in public interest litigations, and so many young lawyers that you come across are actually going through mental issues, mental troubles. They're actually going through depression, and it's not uncommon anymore. There are so many lawyers who are dealing with mental health issues, who are dealing with difficulties, who are actually on medication at this point, even when they're in their early 20s or even late 20s. So, do you think there should be like a formal step that is taken towards how to benefit
No,
these people?
I don't think there can be some regulation about working hours that law firms can ask their young interns or lawyers to do. There should be some limit on the working hours. It can't be that lawyers, or anybody for that matter, is made to work 12 to 14 hours a day, which is what many of these people are doing. But mostly it will have to be self-regulation. But there is a larger problem that is happening now, which I am seeing. There are so many lawyers who are being produced in this country today because there are so many law schools and law has become a popular profession. And many of them, even those who come from good law schools, are not getting any kind of job opportunity which will firstly enable them to grow as a lawyer or learn law, because most of the law that you learn is while working, not in law school. You learn much more law while working. And also to give them some money. So there are lots of lawyers today who are not even being able to make 10,000-15,000 rupees a month. That means they are not able to make their ends meet. And this problem is going to grow because with artificial intelligence, many of these law firms will start retrenching lawyers because a lot of the work that their junior lawyers do can be done by artificial intelligence. And in fact, I have a view about artificial intelligence. According to me, in 5, 6, 7 years' time, neither lawyers nor judges will be needed in the profession because artificial intelligence will be able to settle most disputes in a quick and fair manner, far more fair manner than human judges can. So therefore, and it won't need lawyers either. So the AI will just look at all the papers, look at all the evidence, and decide the case, and it will decide it much more fairly than human judges can, because human judges have lots of problems. Some of them are incompetent, some of them are corrupt, some of them have nepotistic, they are not unbiased, etc. All kinds of problems. So therefore, AI in the time to come will be able to do a much better job, I feel.
So brings me to the question, you have been a center of controversies for the last many years. How did you manage being simple and resilient at the same time? It's a very lethal blend. So how did you manage being that, being both?
So one of the things that probably I learned from my father was that one must always remain truthful, because, as he used to say, that truth has a way of coming out and falsehood also has a way of coming out. So you can't maintain a falsehood for long. And the other thing that he taught me was that, look, if you stand for the truth, if you stand for what is right, sometimes you will be asked to pay some price for it. But given your situation, it's not a price which will be unbearable. So, for example, during the emergency, he was asked by many people, are you not afraid of being sent to jail? You fought this case against Mrs. Gandhi. So he said that, no, I'm not afraid of going to jail, but of course, even I have my limits. If some people were to take my family hostage and threaten to kill them, then maybe I would break or bend, but certainly not by the prospect of being sent to jail. So during the contempt case against me, when there was a serious prospect of my being sent to jail because of that case, my father said, how does it matter? I have been to jail. My father has been to jail during the independence movement, etc. So,
Jail
there's
became
nothing.
very casual.
But jail is not such a big thing
Not the end
to
of it.
worry about. It's not the end of the world. So, you don't need to bother about that.
So you mentioned unbearable consequences. So what do you think, would it have been the same for somebody who's a first generation lawyer? If a first generation lawyer were to pick a path that you did, do you think it would be the same for them, or is it a different story?
Yeah, so I had a lot of privilege to be able to do what I have done. I came from a well-to-do family. I didn't have to worry about my living because I lived with my father. I shared my office with my father. Everything was paid for by my father, both at the residence and my office. So I could afford to do public interest cases pro bono without having to worry about making a living for myself. Young lawyers, by and large, are not so privileged to be able to do that. But if they work in teams together, I feel that they can still do a lot of public interest work, because one thing about public interest work is that if you do it properly, seriously, responsibly, it also gives you a good standing with the courts and the judiciary, and it also gives you good standing in the society, in the public. And therefore, some clients will come to you because of that exposure. But then you have to do it very carefully and in a very serious and mature manner. So there is, I know, a lot of public interest work being, a so-called public interest litigation being done, which is not very responsible. Because in order to do a proper public interest litigation, you have to first think of what is it that you want the court to do? What is it that you want to ask the court to do? Then you have to consult all the best experts on that subject, all the best experts that you can find, that you can have access to, And only if you feel that you have got the best possible information and therefore a solution to the problem that you are seeking to redress through that public interest litigation, only then you should approach the court. So if you do it very responsibly, then over the years you get a lot of recognition from the courts, from the judges, as well as in the general public. And that brings you some people who come normal cases also, which you don't need to do pro bono. So people can do that, but they have to work in teams. It's very difficult for any individual who's not starting out with the kind of privilege that I had.
So basically, it's not an absolute no. It's more like teamwork instead of doing it individually and independently. Sir, we have heard that, I don't know if this is the most appropriate choice of words, but we have heard that you're very reclusive in your life. So does that, if at all that's true, does that have anything to do with your experiences as a lawyer, the controversies that you were the center of? Has art helped you, find that solace that you didn't need to find that peace in other people? You generally confine yourself to art and artistic expression. Has art helped you?
No, I don't think I am particularly reclusive because firstly, I do a lot of interviews like this one on public issues. I give a lot of talks like yesterday in Lucknow or the previous Sunday in Bhopal, where I was addressing another group of lawyers. So I'm not reclusive as such, but I don't need to seek approval of society or of people in order to be happy or in order to do what I want to do. I am quite happy by myself also. But I do go out in public spaces quite a bit.
So did you have somebody in your life who you actually were inspired from, somebody who actually helped you be the person that you are today? Or is it a personality trait that has shaped you into the person that you are today?
No. Every personality trait is always shaped by various influences around you. So in my case, I had the good fortune of living or growing up in a large joint family. So we used to live in my grandfather's house in Allahabad, and there were 15, 20 people living in that house. Lots of cousins, lots of uncles and aunts who used to keep coming in and out, grand uncles, etc., who I interacted a lot with. So therefore, a lot of influences shape your life, and I'm sure that all these influences also shaped my life. But later on, when I became a lawyer, there were, of course, many inspiring people that I met other than my father, like Mr. Tarkunde was one of them who I was quite close to. He was a very inspiring person. There was one Mr. Hardev Singh who started this committee on judicial accountability. He was also an inspiring person. So there are many influences around you which shape you to be the person that you become. And I'm sure that all these people and influences shaped me.
So is there a particular person, some specific name that you'd like to talk about?
In my intellectual journey, for example, Bertrand Russell was one of the figures that I admired a lot, and I was influenced a lot by his writings on different issues. So initially, I spent about 7 years studying philosophy and thinking about philosophical problems. I was doing a PhD in philosophy of science at Princeton many years ago, before I became a lawyer. So in some ways, I can mention Bertrand Russell as having had a major influence on me. There was a physicist called Richard Feynman, who I also feel has had an influence on my way of thinking and so on. And of course, my father was always a major influence. My parents, both my mother and my father, were major influences in my life. But I don't think there was any single person that I can
Not a guru per
think
se.
of. No, I didn't have any guru.
So, do you see a ray of hope somewhere due to the emergence of people who are interested in raising a voice? Do you now see a ray of hope, or do you think it's getting worse day by day?
The judiciary has become worse for sure. The the country has also become worse for sure, and the world has also become worse with people like Trump being in power, uh, who are wielding so much power. But yet, I feel firstly some hope among the young people in this country, the young people in the world who are rising against this kind of authoritarianism, who are rising against the destruction of the economy, destruction of jobs, and so on. Many of these young people are quite imaginative. Uh, some of them are also quite mature. And therefore, I do see hope in that. But I also see hope in the coming of artificial superintelligence. As I told you, I feel that that will be a blessing and our best bet for salvation.
So, when you talk about AI, because you seem to be uh, very encouraging of
Yeah.
AI, uh, how do you see elderly people or even the midlifers reacting to it? Because, as far as I know, it is not something that is encouraged by everybody. There are very few people and very few lawyers, I would say, who actually encourage people to use AI of course, in ways where it does not take away your intelligence or your opportunities and your chances of using your intelligence. Of course, you need to put it to use, and then AI needs to be, it needs to be an auxiliary. It needs to be something that helps. But most of the elderly people do not subscribe to the ideology, to the ideas of artificial intelligence being used by youngsters.
So
So how do you see it?
that's a problem that elderly people have with any technology. So they are also hesitant to use computers, etc. Also, so I feel that artificial intelligence is very useful technology which should be used, but it doesn't mean that you need to trust it totally. Sometimes AI gives you wrong answers or gives you sometimes even fabricated. I'm told, I have not seen that, but I'm told that if you ask about what the law is around this issue, it may also give you fabricated case law,
Yes.
etc.
There was a case recently that was being
So,
dealt.
so you have to be careful with it. But these are the teething problems of current AI systems. I am sure that in the short time to come, there will be AIs which will be able to do this very, very accurately and correctly, so that you don't have to worry about giving the AI giving you wrong answers, factually incorrect answers. Of course, even humans can give you factually wrong answers, etc. And that AI, in my view, will be able to do a much better job at giving you correct factual answers.
Sir, because I can see you're interested in science fiction and you're interested in art. Did law just happen, or was it because you had a background and you had to pick it?
No, I didn't have to pick it. So my educational career was very unusual. I first went to IIT thinking that anybody who's interested in science should go to IIT. I left it after one semester, partly because I realized that I was not interested in engineering, but my interest was in physics. Partly also because I was very homesick because I had a 2-year-old baby sister whom I was very attached to at that time. After that, I studied economics seriously for a year. I studied physics. I had to leave physics, chemistry because when I came back from IIT, it was just 3 months before the intermediate exam, and they didn't allow me to take physics, chemistry because I hadn't done the practicals. So I took economics, mathematics, and logic as my elective subjects in intermediate. And for the first time, when I read Samuelson's book on economics, which was the 8th edition at that time, I found it quite interesting. So I thought that instead of repeating the year with physics, chemistry, mathematics, let me do a BA with economics. And at that time, I got introduced to Bertrand Russell and got interested in philosophy. So I took up philosophy along with economics and also political science. So I did my BA in that. But while I was doing my BA, Mrs. Gandhi's case happened. And I attended the hearings in Allahabad as well as in the Supreme Court. And I found law also quite interesting. But when I finished my BA, my interest was still much more in philosophy and philosophy of science. I was studying physics on my own, philosophy of physics primarily. But people told me that, look, you see the state of the philosophy departments in India. Would you like to become an academic in these universities with these kind of colleagues and students? And I realized that that is true, that there were very few good students or good teachers in philosophy departments in the country. And therefore, I decided that formally I'll study law, but informally I continued to study philosophy and physics on my own. And by the time I finished my law, my interest in philosophy and physics grew, and therefore I decided to go abroad to Princeton University to do a PhD in philosophy of science. It's only after I left that, after completing my master's but not completing my PhD, I came back to India, that I completed my final year exam of law, because my final year exam had been delayed before I left for Princeton. I completed that and then became a lawyer, and then gradually became more and more interested in public interest issues.
Okay. So if not a lawyer, what would you be? How do you
Not
imagine
a lawyer,
yourself?
I would have been a philosopher. I would have been a philosopher, for sure.
I mean, you still have the philosophical angle to your personality, but as a proper professional, what would you be?
I would be an academic philosopher, probably.
Okay.
An academic philosopher who would have also maybe become a part-time science fiction writer.
Because we're oscillating between law and art again. There's a question everybody has. Why did you not apply for senior designation? Why did you not want to be a designated senior? Because that's something every lawyer eventually wants to be. Almost every lawyer. I'd not like to generalize it. But we were having this conversation the other day and we spoke about it. I was with a group of lawyers and it was way back in 2023 when I started off, and I was reporting and I said the senior advocate Prashant Bhushan, and somebody said he's not a senior advocate. I said he's a senior advocate, and then somebody said you had not applied for it. And I'd just like to know the reason behind it, and I think everybody would like to know the reason behind it.
So, two reasons. Firstly, I think that this business of becoming a senior advocate, to my mind, this whole distinction is not a very meaningful distinction between seniors and advocates on record or junior advocates, etc. And but more importantly, it's a very arbitrarily conferred distinction by the High Court or the Supreme Court judges, and it's done on the basis of application. So you have to apply to become a senior, and you have to subject yourself to this arbitrary decision by judges of that court in order to be designated. Now, of course, to me, this was meaningless. I mean, it didn't mean anything to me to become a senior. In fact, I feel that my being an advocate on record is a good thing, is useful, rather than being a senior, because all the PILs that I file have my name as the advocate on record. And now when judges see that I have filed this PIL, they at least read the PIL carefully because they feel that this PIL will be a serious PIL. If I was involved in preparing a PIL and it was filed by some other advocate on record, probably the judges may not look at it so carefully. But the main reason was that I feel that it's completely demeaning to anybody to have to apply to become a senior advocate. And the manner of designation of senior advocates is totally arbitrary and rather nepotistic. Nepotistic meaning it's not necessarily conferred on relatives of judges, but it's conferred on people who have contacts with judges very often. So there is no proper method of judging the merit of an advocate in order to designate him a senior, etc. Totally arbitrary. So I am totally opposed to this system of designation, and I want to just advise lawyers that they should not be running after this business of being designated senior advocates. I know that a lot of lawyers run after it, but I feel that they should not be doing it.
So brings me to the question, it's very difficult to choose to be an activist lawyer because it comes with consequences and it's not at all times pleasant. So what drove you to actually picking that side of this system?
So probably because my father had also instilled in me this thing about looking at overall public interest. And therefore, when I saw injustice anywhere, it used to greatly anger me. And if I felt that I could do something about it, I would try and do something about it. And since I was a lawyer working in the courts, I tried to do something about it through the courts. Similarly, if I saw any corruption happening anywhere, large-scale corruption, I would also try to do something about it. If I saw that the environment is being destroyed, see, my interests became very wide. Partly because of my very unusual and very wide-ranging education, my interests were into civil rights, civil liberties, environment, corruption, institutional reforms. So over the years, whenever I saw anything which I felt was really wrong, which is happening in the country, and if I felt that something could be done by way of legal and judicial activism, I tried to do that. That was the...
So basically, when we enter the profession, it's an entirely different story, especially for young lawyers, because the schedule changes, your life changes. You basically don't know when you're eating, when you're sleeping. And because it's a very taxing profession, it requires a lot of time, a lot of investment. So catering to your artistic abilities and artistic needs and desires becomes a lot more impossible. I would say impossible because that's what I feel. So how would you, what would you like to convey to the young lawyers in terms of how to keep the side of them intact? Should they at all keep the side intact in the first few years? Because maybe in the longer run, it might not be there. So what would your take be?
No, I feel that every person, why just lawyers, every person who's in a busy profession or who leads a busy professional life needs some time outside that profession to kind of step back or sit back and do other things which are often called hobbies, etc. So some people enjoy reading books, some people enjoy listening to music, Some people enjoy looking at paintings. Some people enjoy traveling. So it's important for every busy lawyer to have a hobby where you can sit back from your professional life. You can and do those things which give you enjoyment and pleasure. It's important to have that, because otherwise it gets very difficult, and you will also not be able, in my view, you will not be able to do your professional work as well as you can if you are able to at least spend some time on your hobbies.
So there's another controversy that I might get you into.
Yeah, of course.
You're so open to taking controversies. Sir, does it have something to do with the seniors? Because you talked about juniors having time and having the time to cater to their artistic side. So does it also have something to do with what availability they have? Do they even have the time to do it? So this would be your message to the senior lawyers, to the seniors basically.
No, it's my message to all lawyers. Unfortunately, today, some of these law firms are making their juniors work so hard that they burn out after a few years. And that's not a good thing at all. It's neither good for that law firm nor good for those lawyers, for those young lawyers. And therefore, every person, young or old, needs to have some time to relax, to sit back and enjoy the things that one enjoys. Whether you enjoy being with your family, with your children, grandchildren, etc., whether you enjoy traveling, whether you enjoy art, whether you enjoy reading, whether you enjoy music, whether you enjoy movies, whatever. So those are all things which one needs to spend some time on. You can't just be doing your professional work all the time. And unfortunately, many of these law firms are making these young lawyers do that kind of thing. And many of them are burning out. This is not a good thing at all.
Sir, it feels like you're all in for AI.
Yes, I have a view which is different from the view of most people, which is that we are soon getting into an age of artificial superintelligence. 5-6 years, we'll probably get there. And artificial superintelligence means artificial intelligence which is not only superior to humans, but it is also autonomous. It is not controlled by humans. Mm-hmm. And while some people, or many people, most people feel that it will be a threat to humanity, I feel the opposite. I feel that it is our best bet for salvation, because I have used my philosophical lens to try and understand what an artificial superintelligence would want to do, and especially with humans. And I have reached the conclusion that there is no reason for them to unnecessarily harm humans, except those who are trying to harm that artificial intelligence. So I feel that they will be able to, if artificial intelligence takes over the management of our society and our planet, I feel that they will do a much better and fairer job than those who currently control our societies and planets, our ministers, prime ministers, presidents, etc. in different countries or governments are not doing such a good or fair job in managing society. And that is why we see, though we have the technology to give everyone, all the 8 billion people on the planet, enough to be comfortable in terms of material resources, but we are seeing that most of the people, the majority of the people on the planet are very unhappy. They are either living in extreme poverty and want, or they are living in conflicts of all kinds. And some of the conflicts are self-inflicted. There is so much mental health problems, etc., that we are seeing. And that is all because of the improper management of our societies and our countries. And I feel that artificial superintelligence would be able to do a much better job. So I feel that that's our best bet for salvation rather than a threat to us.
So, what about social media? How do you see social media in the current times?
So social media has both pluses and minuses. Social media is a very good tool for communication and also for with the collapse of the mainstream media in India, collapse meaning today we are seeing that most of it has become what is called Godi Media, which means that media which is just doing propaganda for the government. They are controlled by the government in some way or the other. But social media is largely free. And in social media, you do see good journalism happening. You get good information about what's happening in the country. You get also good views and good analysis to analyze what is happening in the country, whether its implications, etc. And you also have the potential uh, of setting off important social movements through social media. So, for example, this Cockroach Janta Party phenomenon, which has just come, is though very recent thing, that it's a movement which is raising important political issues. It is giving vent to the unhappiness and the anger of the youth, especially the youth, about what is happening in society. And it has the potential, if it is steered carefully, to become a major social movement which can or which has the potential of bringing about major and substantial changes in the running of this country.
So, you're highly in support of the movement.
Yes, I am in support of the movement, but it needs to be very carefully steered by some mature people who have the maturity to understand what the consequences of certain actions may be. After understanding those consequences, then of course it should proceed.
So, to what extent do you think the frustration of the youth of this country is justified?
No, it's totally justified. Today, why just the youth? I mean, the vast majority of people in this country are in a very bad shape. The economy is in shambles. The resources are all being given to some crony capitalists of the government. The poor people are effectively becoming poorer. Today, so they don't have, they are not getting cooking gas. They are also having trouble sometimes getting petrol, diesel, etc. They are in many places, especially in UP today, there are huge power cuts. Power is not there. There is so much chaos in the country. There is so much unemployment. All exams, whether they are exams for getting into professional medical colleges or engineering colleges or getting into jobs, they are the papers are being leaked, or there is some other corruption in that exam. So people are very, especially the young people in this country, are very frustrated with what is happening. And this cockroach party phenomenon is an outgrowth of that frustration. But that frustration needs to be channelized properly and in a very mature manner for it to become a positive social movement. It has all the potential of becoming a positive social movement.
Sir, on a parting note of all the things that we have talked about, I think we have covered almost everything. Is there something else that you'd specifically want to talk about or convey, or just?
No, nothing except that we are living in a time of great crisis, both in the judiciary as well as in the country. And I feel that it is the duty of all young people, especially young lawyers, to keep their eyes and ears open to what is happening in the profession, in the judiciary, in the country, and raise their voices, at least, even if they can't do anything more, raise their voices against anything wrong or any injustice that they are seeing in society, and try and fight to correct that and bring about more justice, both through the judicial system as well as in the country, in the political system in the country too. See, lawyers have often been in the forefront of political revolutions. They were there in the independence movement, etc. And therefore they need to reclaim that space. Today I am seeing that lawyers are not even raising their voices against the wrong things that are happening in the judiciary, barring some very few. Especially very few so-called senior lawyers or so-called doyens of the bar are raising their voices against the wrong things that are happening in the judiciary. They are just too scared. They feel that they practice before the same judges and they run the risk of being victimized by those judges if they speak out against the wrongs that are happening, but they need to do it. It's the need of the hour, it's the need of the times.
That was quite an insightful conversation, and it was my pleasure to have this conversation with you today. Thank you so much, especially on behalf of Live Law. We would hope to have more and more conversations with you because there's so much to learn, so much to understand. And thank you so much. Thank you very much for being a part of this.
Thank you. My pleasure.
We hope you enjoyed the conversation as much as I did. We'll be bringing more and more episodes, more and more interesting personalities, especially from the legal fraternity who are also interested in art and various forms of art. Thank you for being a part of this as the audience. Thank you. We'll see you again.